Hello, it's Mike from Greenway. Welcome back to the channel. In a previous video, I had quite a few questions come through from someone, and his username is Chev CEU. So thank you, Chev, for those questions, and I'll list them down here in the bottom of the screen. But a few questions he had, and so I wanted to just address those, and I thought they're really great questions to ask, so it warranted a video to fully explain answers to the questions. So the first question he asked was, how and where do you charge your EV? Well, most of the time I have the following routine, I guess I could say, is I do have a garage, so I park my car inside that garage, and it is unheated, so in the winter it does get cold, and it definitely gets down to minus 20, sometimes to minus 25 inside the garage, but it never gets quite as cold as the outside because it's well, it is partially insulated, but there is no heat in it, so it does keep the car out of the wind. Of course, it keeps the snow off of it, and also it does overnight when it drops down to a very cold temperature. It doesn't get quite as cold inside. It probably stays 5 to 7 degrees Celsius warmer than the exterior. But that's how I charge my EV overnight. And then when I go to work during the day, I also have the ability to charge it at work using a block heater plug or a 120 volt level 1 charger. And it does help to increase the charge throughout the day. And then when I get home again, I plug it in inside my garage. And I should say, the charger, the EVSE that I have in my garage, is a level 2 240 volt charger. And I find that those are what I need for my particular driving situation. I'm driving usually around 100 kilometers per day when I account for my commuting back and forth to work and any other errands I need to make. So for me to recoup all that range that I've used up throughout the day, I do need to have that faster level 2 240 volts charger running overnight. However, if I was a person who was driving a lot less, if I was driving 30 or 40 or 50 kilometers in the daytime, or less than 30 miles, I could probably get away with a level 1 charger overnight as long as I'm home for 10 to 12 hours every night. And that's my daily routine Monday through Friday. So I get up in the morning, the car is fully charged, I run to work, I will plug it in at work as well, and then when I get home, I'll plug it in again with my 240 volt level 2. So in the question that you're asking, do I charge the car inside of a warm shed? The answer is no, it's not warmed. It is, but it is warmer than the outside. So then you also asked what kind of charger. So I think I went through that. And then, can an EV live outside, in the exterior with no heated garage or shed in the Canadian winter? And I think the answer is yes. I put mine inside because I happen to have the garage to put it inside of, but I do know of other people that leave theirs outside full time. And different EVs are going to react differently to the cold. Most, if not all of them, are going to have battery heaters, so they're going to keep the battery to a certain temperature. Now, I don't know if 100% of the EVs have a battery heater. Of course, there's so many different ones out there now, but most of the ones that are sold here in Canada will have a heater built into it. So that's going to keep the battery at some minimum temperature if it gets too cold. But what that also means is it's going to take longer to recharge the car in really cold temperatures because the car is going to be using some of its power to heat up the battery. So again, in my scenario, if I am running 100 kilometers per day, by the way, 100 kilometers is around 60 miles. If I'm doing that every day, I definitely will need the level 2 240 volt charger to make up my range overnight, because the level 1 simply won't have enough power to recharge the battery, and especially if it needs some power to heat up the battery as well, that's not going to give it enough power to charge the battery and heat the battery in time to have it full by the next morning. I mentioned some vehicles react differently in the cold. I know Teslas particularly, if it's really cold, say it's below minus 20 Celsius, minus 25 Celsius, or if it's anywhere below 0 Fahrenheit or minus 5 Fahrenheit. If you have it plugged into a 120 volt level 1 charger, it is probably not going to be charging very fast at all, if at all, because it's going to be using a lot of power just to keep the battery warm. And the Tesla battery management system is very aggressive at trying to keep the battery warm in a nice, good temperature. So you're not going to be getting very much, or if any, charging when it's below that temperature overnight in the cold. So definitely in that situation, if I had a Tesla parked outside, I would want to use a level 2 240 volt charger. Then it's going to have enough power to warm up the battery and charge up the battery all at the same time. Many other EVs are going to react differently as well, but I think depending on the type of driving you're doing, it's really going to dictate if you really do need that 120 volt level 1 charger or the level 2. If you're retired, you're only driving the car for a few days, or you're not doing very much distance every day, you're only driving 5 or 6 kilometers or 3 miles a day, then a level 1 charger is just perfectly fine. But if you're driving longer distances like I am with 100 kilometers, 60 miles, then for sure a level 2 charger would be required. You may have seen on my channel here, I'm doing some tests where I've left cars outside, or I've charged them up and then left them outside so that they have the full impact of the super cold temperatures. And the reason I do that is to test to make sure they will, survive that kind of situation. And also what happens is the car will get fully deeply frozen. So when you do need to start it up, so far they've all started just fine, but and I realize I'm not starting an engine, but to get them going in the morning. And then the battery does need to provide quite a bit of power in order to heat up the cabin, heat up the car, or the seats, or the heated steering wheel. So it's fully being utilized to take your car from, say, minus 30 Celsius up to plus 20 Celsius in the cabin. That's a 50-degree difference in Celsius, or Fahrenheit, that's minus 22 Fahrenheit up to plus 70. So that's 92 Fahrenheit increase in temperature. So that's taking a lot of battery power. So that's why I'm doing some of those experiments, leaving the cars outside for days at a time or weeks at a time, and just to see how well they can cope with that. Now, you are going to use less energy if you keep your car parked inside, because the car, like if in my case where my garage is slightly warmer, even though I'm not heating my garage, it is just warmer by being enclosed space. Is not as impacted for the outside temperature. So that means that when you're heating your car up in the morning, it's going to be using less of the battery. But also, many cars, I want to say most, if not all of them, will have a preheat feature as well. Some of them you can program this through the dashboard. You can tell it you're leaving at 7 a.m. You want the car preheated by then, or through the app or other means. And then what will happen is the car is going to be pulling some of the power from the wall outlet instead of from the battery. So in ideal conditions, you'll have a fully warmed car and a fully charged battery just before you leave. So that will be the ideal conditions. And many of the cars have that capability to do that. Now, when you go to work then, and you park it outside all day, of course, by the end of the day, you're not parking it outside. Some of the cars, you are parking it outside. And so you'll have the full impact of the daytime temperatures, although the daytime is usually quite a bit warmer. But some of them will have the ability to preheat before you go home as well. And depending on your situation, if you're charging at work or not, that will use some wall power or not. But many of the EVs now have quite a long range. You're looking for 300 kilometers, 400 kilometers, or at least 200 miles on many of the new EVs. So a normal average commute is certainly well within its range. Even when you consider that when it gets down to really, really cold temperatures, you are going to be losing quite a bit of your range. And I've done different range tests. It can lose, 20 to 30 to 40 to 50% of the range depending on the temperature. But when you get into those situations, assuming you're not driving, unless you're commuting 300 kilometers a day, which you're probably not, you'll be just fine. But then when it comes to road trips, you'd need to do a bit of a different planning for that. So, thank you for your questions, and if anyone has any further questions they want me to go over, please leave them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video interesting or informative, I'd appreciate it if you would consider giving me a thumbs up and also subscribe for future videos. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.